think it's time to finally ask or answer the age-old question. I think a lot of people have pondered the answers in their own heads for a long time, and that is, why do I love horror films? That is, uh, I can't really explain it. I can try my best, and it all goes back to when I was a wee lad. I was obsessed with watching movies. Anything from the Ninja Turtle films to the Mortal Kombat movies. Lots of kids movies, of course, like the Disney films, all that kind of shit. And there was a slew of other movies that came out when I was a kid. Movies like fucking say Stuart Little and like all that kind of shit. A Bug's Life, Chicken Run. There was a ton of these kind of like kids movies. But whenever I would go to my dad's house on the weekends, that's when I would be watching movies like The Blob, The Thing, Dawn of the Dead, Clockwork Orange, like all that kind of stuff. And there was no real boundary for me when I was a kid. Like my dad was never. He always told me it's fake. It's all bullshit. In other words. And I would be like, okay. And he would, whenever there was special effects, he would comment, this isn't that cool, isn't that cool? So I was under that impression for a long time. Still scared by horror films, of course. Like movies like The Exorcist freak me the fuck out. And I probably mentioned this before, but even like those shows where they would like, not like those ghost hunter shows, but those shows where it would be like a documentary style show, and they'd have people come in, talk about their experience, and then they would overlay, recreation, dramatization of the events that happened. And it was always those dramatizations that freaked me the fuck out, because they always, like, they were kind of, sometimes they would use like this hazy, like shoot it in like a lower frame rate than 24 frames per second, so it would kind of like jump almost, like it looked dreamlike, crazy shit. So that stuff really freaked me the fuck out, but not to the point that it drove me away from wanting to watch this stuff. I know that happens with a lot of people. Like when you're kids, you see a movie that freaks you out, and then that just turns you off from horror, right? I've seen it happen, but with me, it just made me more addicted. So the more fucked up the movie was, the more I wanted to see. So, uh, and like, I think a lot of people have the same kind of experience with me. They're getting all of their knowledge secondhand through someone either in their family or close to their family, where they're feeding you all this kind of stuff, like the Freddy Kruegers and the Jasons and the Halloweens and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all the kind of franchisey stuff, Leprechaun. I'm just trying to make this as personal as I can make it, because all these references I'm making, these are all the movies because I've, like I said before, man, I didn't know that I knew there was a lot of Freddy Krueger movies, but I only seen the first one for a long time. That New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, that was it. And so when people talked about how Freddy was a jokester, I was always kind of like, okay, but like, how many jokes does he make in those movies? And to my knowledge at the time, it was very few jokes. Like there was a few things in Nightmare on Elm Street that were creepy as hell, but or semi funny, I should say. Like the tongue coming out of the phone, even the scene where Freddy cuts off his fingers, and like he's kind of got a bit of a goofy face. Like that even freaks me out, and he had like green blood. So that alone was some next level shit when I was a kid. I remember the first time I seen that movie, and it fucked me up when he's running down the alleyway with the long arms and everything with Tina when she's in the bag. Not so much the scene where Tina gets murdered in her room, which is a practical effects display of fucking magistry, or magic. It's insane. Like if you want to know some insane fucking methods to take in order to make a good film, Wes Craven used a fucking set that was put up on like it was hoisted up essentially so the whole entire set could move. It was really fucking cool to see, man. So they flipped it upside down, had the actress go completely berserk. But yeah, so that like I said, that scene didn't scare me, but it affected me to the point of wanting to know how it was done. Same with the later on scene where Johnny Depp is like on the bed and he gets taken down and the blood comes up, like all that's all reverse, like it's all upside down sets. So I like to think of like the guy that was like gluing down everything, making sure the bed like looks like the sheets are down, all that kind of stuff. It was radical, man. But yeah, it wasn't just Freddy Krueger, of course. Like I said, there was a slew of other things, but there was also like the monster films that were coming out at the time when I was a kid, which there was a lot. I can't even really think of any names. Oh, okay, here we go. So we had movies like Fear.com. We had movies like the string of remakes that were put out by, I think, Ghost House. They put out I think they put out 13 Ghosts. They put out, I think, Ghost Ship. They put out the remake of The Haunting, I believe. There was House on Haunted Hill. There was 13 Ghosts. Like those kind of movies were the movies that were coming out that were like the mainstream horror when I was a kid. Other than like the Screams and I Know What You Did Last Summer, that kind of stuff. But I enjoy Scream. I enjoy Scream 2. I even enjoy Scream 3 and Scream. Like, I like them all, but those movies were never as good to me as, you know, the films that they're paying homage to, you know? Like, all of your, have you checked that? What's that movie called where he says, have you checked the children? I think it's, Don't Answer the Phone. Like those kind of movies, they're paying an homage to that. Not only are they paying homage to those types of films, but they're also like referencing them right out, you know, and talking about like intricate horror shit. Like even within the first movie, and this has been talked about a lot, but when Drew Barrymore is on the phone and she's asked about Friday the 13th films, and she says Jason, and the guy says, no, motherfucker, like it was Mrs. Voorhees. Like that kind of level of horror fandom was included in that film. And I really do like it. It just, like I said, there was stuff that I far would have rather watched. Like, I would always love to watch some Dawn of the Dead. I would always love to watch, you know, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, all that kind of stuff. Omega Man, which I just did a video recently on. All those just 70s, 80s films. And it, like, to me, I felt like there was a lot of 80s films I was watching when I was a kid, but it really was mostly 70s stuff because my dad, he didn't buy the franchisey stuff. Like, there was no Night of the Demons, there was no Night of the Creeps, even though that's not a franchise film, but like The Burning, like I didn't discover The Burning till years later. I didn't discover the Reanimator till years later. I'd seen the cover and all that, but I never watched it up until within the last, I would say, 7 or 8 years. Same with Return of the Living Dead. I'd only ever seen the first one, like the whole thing, and it was like, I shouldn't say seen it, I should say own, because a lot of these films I'd seen over on cable and shit like that. But you know, movies like I'm just looking over here at some flicks like Village of the Damned, of course. Like these are like kind of my horror roots, and it wasn't until I was buying my own films and shit that I discovered some of the shit I've been talking about. You know what I mean? Like your exploitation-y stuff, the stuff that was kind of just not shielded. I wasn't shielded from it, but I was like, I feel, all right, not to get too off track, but that's another thing that makes collecting this shit so unique, because everybody has their own story wrapped around certain films, you know, because there was a kid across the country probably that watched everything that I didn't, and didn't watch everything that I did. You know what I'm saying? So it's really cool that way, man. And there's a hell of a lot of stuff to watch. Like when I watch videos from some of my favorite like YouTubers and stuff that have like these insane collections that just span the whole fucking like I think I have a pretty decent collection, but when it comes to like the stuff that I'm actually trying to watch right now, it's not even close, man, because I've only just within the last like 2 years like really nailed down everything that I had seen already. You know what I mean? Like got all that shit. And now I'm starting to dive, like The Howling 2 was one that I got within the last couple of years that I still haven't watched. And I've heard that's really fucking good. But there's quite a few movies like Mountain of the Cannibal God I haven't watched. Like I have a problem with not watching these films for a long time sometimes. Like I bought John Woo's The Killer and Hard Boiled at the same time and didn't watch them for like 3 years or some shit. Like might have been 2 years or at least a year I didn't watch those movies. And then when I finally did, I was so fucking blown away. Like those became like some of my favorite movies of all time. And it wasn't like a thing where like I was putting it off. I was putting it off, but I can't describe why. The only reason, or the only thing I can say about it is because it was almost like, all right, I got this to watch, I'm just going to put it on the back burner, you know, and you kind of forget about it. And then, you know, when you finally watch the shit, you get your fucking head blown off. Like, I'm trying to think of another movie that happened to me with. I think it might have happened to me with From Beyond. With it's a Stuart Gordon film. Rest in peace, Stuart Gordon. But yeah, man. And it wasn't just horror films though. I mean, this video is probably called why I love horror films, but it could be wrapped in, you could throw in exploitation, action, and Asian all into that, because I pretty much love that shit for the same reason. I was exposed to it when I was super duper fucking young. Because like my parents split up when I was a kid, and I lived with my mom, my stepdad during the week, and my dad on the weekends, which I'm sure is a fucking thing that a lot of people have went through. And but my stepdad Richie would show me, or wouldn't necessarily like purposely show me, but the stuff that he was watching, that my first exposure to The Thing by John Carpenter, like was through Richie. And then I remember going to my dad's, and he had the tape, and being like, oh my god, we can watch this over here, like can watch this with the old man kind of thing. But not only was Richie showing me that shit, he was showing me shit like Strapped. He was showing me shit like Rambo. Like this is ingrained in my head. I've probably mentioned this before on the channel, but I'll say it again. I never get tired of saying this. I'll never forget the afternoon that me, my brother, Richie, sat in the living room, watched all 3 Rambos, and I have the fucking box set behind me that we watched that shit with. And it was the first time that I'd seen any of them. I'm like 10 or 11 at this point. Like we had just moved into this house, so I was about 10 or 11, and I was like, this is unreal. And the scene, I think it's in Rambo 3, where he puts like the shotgun shell powder into his wound and lights it on fire to seal it. Like I remember thinking like, whoa, that's fucking intense, man. Yeah, and a lot of martial arts films. Like one of my favorite low budget martial arts films is called Secret of the Shaolin Poles. I think it's on YouTube, but the problem with that copy is it's zoomed in, which is no good. I'd avoid that one. Try to get a store-bought copy if you can, or find it in another way. It could be somewhere, but basically that movie is all about this field that has all these like bamboo poles in it, like pretty close together, so you can fight on top of them, and they're having all these fights. But there's a scene later on the film where the bad guy basically has the hero's girl, and he's like, take her on top of the Shaolin poles and rape her. And like it's and he's like, if anybody wants to watch, let them, like that kind of shit. I remember being like, I showed that to my friend Tom years later, and there was a point where me and my buddy Tom, we would sit in my basement, get high as shit, and just watch, like we were watching some low budgety shit from the 70s right out of the Chop Saki fridge, man. Like I can't even remember, some like Young Hero of Shaolin. There's this like folk character, I think his name's Fong Sai-yu, but there's like tons of movies based around that character, like just tons. Yeah, and then it wasn't much long after showing like my buddy Tom like movies like Shaolin Poles and stuff, where I was like, all right, I'm gonna collect these. You know what I mean? I think it'd be fun to collect these, and I started off with like maybe like 20 movies, 20 turned to 40, 40 turned to 80, 80 turned to fucking however much, like tons. Like I just started buying everything, but the problem with that was I was buying everything, including the shit. It's stuff that I'd maybe heard of when I was a kid, but never seen, so I don't have like that connection to it. Like movies like Page Master, movies like just some random ass, I can't even like really describe, just like anything that I'd heard of that I thought might be good, I bought, because I was thrifting, right? It wasn't like I was going to the fucking Walmart and spending top dollar. I'm spending like a quarter a tape if I'm, when I'm lucky and shit, and just amass this huge collection, which turned into a nightmare, because once you have to downsize all that shit, you're fucked, man, because you're not gonna get a lot of money for this shit unless you have rare tapes. It's a fact. You will not get a lot of money if you like. I've had a booth one time. Shout out to Odyssey Records. Had a booth at VHS Fest #1 there, and I was selling my shit for like $3 a tape, and people, I think I made close to $200 that night, like just off the cheap tapes. I sold a bunch of my own tapes, and then like of my short films, and the ones that I didn't sell, I just gave away to the vendors at the end of it, because I was like, I don't want to. I want to get these out there in some degree, even if they're not being bought. I want to get them out there into other people's collections, because I think that's fun and cool. And I'm also open to make more of those. So if anybody wants one in the future, like we'll talk. That'll be we'll talk. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. But yeah, man. Other than like just buying these films and amassing the collection, I was barely watching what I was buying. I would go back to the stuff that I'd seen a million times. Like I would watch Psycho like fucking 20 times in a week. But like at the same time, I'm buying John Woo films and just shelving them. I'm buying Fulci films and shelving them and not knowing any better or knowing any better just because I don't know if I had like some sort of fucking compulsion where I had to keep watching the same film, and that still happens to me to this day, where I'll watch like fucking, like when I first met my girlfriend, I was watching Moby Dick all the time, and she'd sleep over and you'd hear like that one, like it'd get to that one song and she would be like oh my, like she would, it was hilarious to me, but not to her. But Jaws, I watched Jaws a shitload of fucking times. Like it happens to me from time to time. Like I'll just kind of get infatuated with a film. And it's usually films that are long as shit, because I like to put on a movie like that before I go to sleep, and then I just end up watching 70% of the film before I pass out. And it's good, man. Like like there's a lot of shit that I've been meaning to watch right now, and I know this video is kind of taking a bit of a turn, but like what can I say, man? Like there's so much shit to watch, and there is a lot of time to do it right now, so that is a good thing. But at the same time, what do you watch? I like to think that I have this collection narrowed down and fine-tuned and tailored to my taste, but there is still room for improvement. Like there's movies down here that I've yet to watch, don't know if they're any good or not, and I don't know if they're on my shelf for no reason, because every shelf in this goddamn room has got movies on it. And the problem with that is I have 2 Rubbermaid containers in the closet over here that are filled with tapes too. And I'm thinking, okay, is there stuff in there that could have stayed out while some of this shit goes in? Like there's movies I've yet to see, movies like Midnight Cowboy, a lot of classics, Street People, Experiment in Terror, Cop with James Woods, Communion with Christopher Walken, a slew of Clint Eastwood films I've yet to see. Some kind of like I don't know what you'd call them, like movies like Puma Man. I don't even know if that's a horror film or not. Dragnet. Well, I've seen Dragnet. Shout out to the film Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks. It's hilarious and it's awesome. It's a buddy cop film from the 80s based on a series from like the 50s.